Ever have enough ingredients in your fridge but not really know what to make? Well, that was me when we first moved into this new place. And so I just decided to reach out to my good old friend ChatGPT and get some help. I know people have mixed feelings about ChatGPT, but really it just saves so much time for me and it saves myself from going through so many different websites and recipes and trying to figure out what I want. Rather, I could just input all of the ingredients into ChatGPT and have it produce the recipes for me and then just pick which ones that excite me. And I know this is starting to sound like a pitch for ChatGPT, but I promise you it's not. It's just a great tool that I've been able to use to get so many amazing recipes. So for this recipe, I wanted some veggies, which I just kind of used whatever I could find. For my protein, I decided to use tofu. And in terms of what makes this tasty, I had some tahini and harissa, which, to be honest, I don't know why I had, but I thought maybe ChatGPT could help me figure out something with that. Okay, cool. Now that we have all the items ready and out, you always want to make sure cooking is fun and get yourself comfy. So I got myself a drink. I didn't want to play music because copyright issues, but play some music, whatever you need. I also wanted some rice with this dish, so I went ahead and put some water to boil. And in the meantime, first step, wash your veggies. All right. It's kind of tedious, and honestly, I don't enjoy it, but I feel like that's one of those things like brushing your teeth in the morning, you got to do it. So don't forget to do that. All right, on to cutting. So for my veggies, I had carrots in the fridge and some bell peppers, so that's what I decided to use. You can use whatever veggies you want. This dish is your creation. Cooking is my meditation. I feel like my mind goes blank and I'm just fully present with what I'm doing, and cutting is where all of that begins. It's also such a creative process, like the way people, you know, will use painting or music as their outlet. Cooking is that for me, and if I have to do it 2 or 3 times a day, I think it would be helpful for me to find a way to make it more fun and think about it a little bit differently than, another task I have to do. And to be honest, I did used to think about it that way. It felt exhausting to have to cook. But now it's something shifted. I don't know how it happened, where it happened, but I just feel like a witch that's putting all these ingredients into a pot and creating a concoction that is tasty most of the time. I can't say it is all the time, but most of the time it is. And it's such a big part of our life. Not only is it fuel, but it also strengthens social connection. I mean, if you go to a party, food is at the centerpiece of it, right? So let's appreciate that. Now that I'm done with my love letter to food, although I have more to say, let's get right to it. So I just finished chopping up the mushrooms and went on to boiling the rice, which, to be honest, I'm really bad at. I should probably get a rice cooker, but I'm lazy. So I like to start with my mushrooms first without any oil, and that is essential because I want it to sweat out its water content without it boiling. And you also want to make sure you don't touch it too much, so just let it sit there and you'll start to see it sweat. It's almost like it's in a sauna or something. And this is what I mean by the sweating. So it's not boiling. If I move it too much, it would start boiling, so you want to make sure you don't do that. And eventually the water dries out and evaporates. And here's where I start seasoning it. So I put in some salt, some pepper. There's this mushroom powder, like a umami flavor complex from Trader Joe's that I really like, so I put that in. So you can put in whatever seasonings you like to your tasting. It's really up to you. This is your canvas. Now, while that's doing its thing, let's focus on protein, which for me is tofu. You can use whatever you want, and ChatGPT told me to keep it a little bit simple with seasoning the tofu because the flavor component that will be happening later on will make up for it. So it told me to use salt, pepper for seasoning, and cornstarch to make it a little bit crispy. But you don't want to use too much. A little goes such a long way. And I am not a good listener, so I also decided I wanted some mushroom powder in there, so I went ahead and added that. To each his own, obviously. You can play around with it. Just because ChatGPT told me what to do, I'm not necessarily listening to it. I just do what feels good for me. Afterwards, you want to make sure you get an even coat. Back to the shrooms. Remember how we didn't add any oil earlier? We wanted the mushrooms to sweat, added the seasonings. Well, now that the seasonings have just kind of played around, hung out with the shrooms, we want to put some oil in, let it saute for a bit, and then start adding those fresh veggies. Look how colorful that is. Oh my gosh, I love orange tones in food. I think it just looks like you're eating the sun, and that warms my heart. So we go ahead and season it with whatever you want. Okay, I added some herbs, I added this onion mix, and as always, the mushroom powder that just rules my cooking life. While the veggies are doing its magic, I went ahead and put the tofu in. And if you have the patience, you can try to get each side cooked evenly, but I usually don't, so I try my best there. Also, I completely forgot about the rice, so I realized that the rice is cooked for the most part, but there's a lot of excess water in there, so I'm gonna drain that out. I told you, I am not that great at cooking rice. I really do need a rice cooker, but I think it worked out just fine. Now it's a matter of waiting and stirring occasionally. The veggies, I want them cooked, but I still want a little bit of a crunch. Okay, this is the exciting part. On to the sauciest of sauce making. So I wanted hints of nuttiness, which I used from the tahini. You can put peanut butter or almond butter, whatever you want. Tahini's just sesame. I wanted some spice from the harissa paste, so I added that in. I also added some soy sauce for a bit of umami and like saltiness. I want to apologize for not really having any measurements, but I really do feel like it's kind of one of those where you just taste, add little by little and taste as you go. The last thing I added was honey. So there's like so many different flavor profiles here. There's like the nuttiness, there's saltiness, there's spice, and there's sweet. And together it gives such a unique Asian-inspired flavor profile. And as always, can't forget the umami mushroom powder. And lastly, I added some black pepper. You don't need any salt as it's so salty with the soy sauce. And once you've added all those things, you can go ahead and mix that in. I added some water to go ahead and dilute the sauce and make it a bit more runny per se, and more of a sauce and less of a paste. Okay, finally we're getting it to the part where we just combine everything. So now we go ahead and put the tofu into the veggie mix and mix it all around. I also went ahead and added some edamame for a hint of freshness. And for the finale, the sauce. Oh my gosh, this is the best part, mostly because it means that you're basically done. And you can honestly turn off the heat. Oh, one last thing I forgot to mention, which hopefully you're watching this before making the dish, is that you can kind of have the heat at low to medium and adjust depending on how fast the food is cooking. Last up is garnish, and I added cilantro, but the funny thing is that I used to hate cilantro, but I think my taste buds slowly evolved. Also adding some lemon for zest and freshness. These two ingredients are totally optional, so if you don't vibe with them, don't add them. I am finally done, and it is... I started at 6 and I finished at 7:15. Not because this is a hard recipe, but because I'm like moving the camera here, moving it here, moving it there, but usually I think this might take me like 40 minutes. I'm just looking at the mess I've made and now I have to clean up. So I'll show you. I would love to present it really nicely, but I want to get to eating, and I love eating in bowls, and this is the only bowls we have. So it won't look as nice, but I'll try. Another thing, I also noticed that if you add a little bit of cheese, my favorite is this one, pecorino. I don't know, it adds a nice oomph to it. So you can add like a light drizzle over it, and with the residual heat, it'll just blend in. My style of cooking is just putting stuff together, whatever I have, and that actually reminds me of how my dad used to say that he would cook when he was younger. Just find whatever's in there, put it all in one pot and call it a meal. But I like to think that I'm a bit fancier than that. Okay, let's get to plating. I'm hungry. Okay, taste test. I wanted to put a green leafy thing in here. You could do whatever you want. If you have a side of salad, if you want to get fancy, make that. I'm just gonna put some arugula on top. Call it a day for tonight. Okay. Wow. This is almost like a Buddha bowl. You can like turn it into a bowl, make it even healthier, replace the rice with quinoa, put in some more fresh veggies. It's so multi-purpose. And it gets all the food groups in that I want, right? Like, I want excessive protein. I want fresh greens or fresh veggies, some carbs in there. It's perfect, I think, pretty balanced meal. So that excites me. Yeah, thank you so much for joining me. This is really fun to make. At first, I was like trying to be cinematic and try to make it nice, but I was like, I can't. I mean, look at the mess behind me. It's crazy. And also, let's be real. It gets messy in the kitchen. It's bound to happen. I can't keep it clean. I tried though in the beginning, and then I was forgetting things. Like I had to pause on the mushrooms for a bit to go back into the tofu because I forgot to, do the cornstarch nutrition seasoning thing. So cooking, I see why cooking can be hard, but when I'm cooking, I'm usually just cooking and not really trying to film it. So when filming comes in hand,
it's a lot harder for me to think. Um, but it was really fun for me. Cooking is kind of my outlet, my creative outlet. It's really fun for me to cook, and especially when it's cooking for a lot of people. And the reason I made a lot, even though it's just myself eating right now, is because my roommate's here. So, well, she's not here; she's at work. But when she gets home, she has food. Yeah. Thank you for joining me, and I hope everyone has a good dinner and is having a good night or morning or afternoon.